I'd like to call the meeting and welcome all of these fine people to the City of Kalispell's work session for April 14, 2025. Mr. Russell, we have one item and one scheduled item for discussion this evening, central garage service and facility review. If you want to jump start us on that.
Yeah, Mayor and Council. As this is part of our budget discussions, we look at long-term, and this is one of the areas that is kind of rising to the top in terms of trying to address some space needs long-term. In all actuality, it'd been nice to be able to fit this within the budget, but honestly, there's just not space for it. We need to take it back and try and find some other financing components that may aid in this process. But it's important enough that we wanted to bring it for a full meeting and go through process what we're looking at, what we're faced with down in the shop complex. That in combination with the solid waste facility, which was part of the work plan. There is funding for that. That will be in this year's budget as part of that rate review and business plan that was adopted by council. But in the larger scope, the central garage facility and all our different shops down there and really kind of the space needs and just starting to look at it long term. Like I said, even though it's not going to be in the budget this year, we may have some design components as we're trying to site that solid waste facility along with a potential future facility. It'd be good to have some of that upfront engineering siting done with this. But really just wanted to start bringing this forward to council. You can see what's being faced. It's one of those things that is going to not go away. Like I said, just in the amount of growth we've seen internally over the last 10 to 15 years at the city. Obviously, those apparatuses are growing, the size of the departments are growing, and they are eventually going to outgrow the facilities themselves. So with that, our Director of Public Works, Susie Turner, has put together a presentation for council, and she'll walk through some of those needs, some of the designs, some of the funding options we've already looked at, and then just kind of that discussion. Don't really need any guidance tonight, so this is kind of like a freebie budget workshop. Since I know everyone kind of wants one of those tucked in here or there. But in all reality, we probably would have spent a good amount of time during budget talking about this. So it's good to kind of separate from those respective discussions and have come forward on its own work session. So with that, Susie, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Your Honor and council members. As I begin this evening, I'd like to introduce our Public Works fleet experts.
Mike.
Pardon me. Did you hear what I said at all? Yes.
I did.
How about I'll start with, I'm going to introduce our Public Works fleet experts. With us tonight is Jean Corney, our road and fleet superintendent, and Tom Tinney, our central garage supervising mechanic. When I say experts, I rely on their expertise every day as we work through mechanical issues with our fleet. For tonight's topic, as Doug introduced, we're going to focus on the central garage and our current services, some of the challenges we are facing regarding staff and the facility. For the city, a well-maintained fleet is essential for effective and efficient city operational service. Without our fleet, the city departments really have a difficult time operating. The city central garage service can be compared to an engine, if you will, under the hood. You don't see it very often, but it keeps everything running. And that's kind of what our central garage does for the city of Kalispell. When we can perform timely repairs, it reduces fleet downtime and we can save money compared to outsourcing. For a simple example, we could use a four-wheel brake repair. In-house costs are around $660. That includes materials and time, and maybe it might take 2 days. When we do outsourcing, it's double the cost at $1,360, and we can be out with that fleet for 1 day, 2 days, 2 weeks. We don't know because we are not a priority for outsourcing as a part of that. So there's just difficulties when we have to bring and outsource our fleet for repairs. The central garage is an internal transfer fund, and it is responsible for servicing and maintaining over 325 pieces of equipment for the city. Our team of skilled mechanics provide support for all 5 of the city departments. Currently, staff supporting Central Garage includes 1 supervisor, Tom, and 2 full-time mechanics. Our mechanics diagnose, service, fabricate, and repair, and all that is performed on a wide range of vehicles and equipment. That equipment ranges from a ladder truck to lawnmowers to construction equipment, all the way to light-duty vehicles. Our technicians are highly trained and certified to work on a variety of equipment. For our emergency vehicles, our technicians are required to have EVT certification. So those are for your fire trucks and ambulance, police. So we have to have certification to be able to perform maintenance and repairs on emergency vehicles. And then for other pieces of equipment, small and large trucks, construction equipment, there's ASC certifications that our mechanics have to go through these certifications to be able to perform the requirements on city fleet for those. So again, highly trained professionals that we have in our central garage mechanic for our mechanics. Additionally, the profession over the last 10 years or so has really required our technicians to not only know the mechanical components of our fleet, but they also have to be experts and perform diagnostics for complex electrical and electronic systems. Essentially, we've moved into the smart world, right? All of some of our pieces of equipment are computers on wheels, and we have to be able to diagnose those systems too and be able to repair them. So a whole new realm of expertise that we have to gain as we have smart vehicles that we have come into our fleet. Our goal for Central Garage is to handle most repairs in-house. We want to minimize the reliance on outside vendors. We want to reduce costs, and we want to return the equipment to service as fast as we can. So that's our goal for our fleet, and that's the service we want to provide. When we look at the Central Garage services, and they provide the full range of maintenance and repairs, including our lube services, where we perform routine oil and fluid changes, paired with inspections. As our vehicles come in for services, our mechanics will also do preventative maintenance and inspections to try to catch the small repairs at that time, so then we can maintain those repairs up front and kind of prevent costly repairs down the line. We do tire services, dismounting, mounting, balancing, and repair tires for vehicles and mowers. We can service breakdowns out in the field. We can go out in the field with our service truck and perform repairs. And if we can't get the repairs completed out in the field, then we have them towed back to Central Garage and then work on them at the shop complex. We have general maintenance repairs, and that kind of ranges from minor tasks like fixing a taillight to major overhauls such as transmission replacements or a complete engine rebuild. So you can see there's just this vast variety of skills and knowledge that we have to perform because we have a large variety of equipment that we have to maintain. In our central garage, we also provide support by ordering small parts and accessories, nuts, bolts, bungee cords. So that's kind of the central garage is kind of the hub for some of that equipment for the rest of the divisions. We also supply essential fluids like oils, antifreeze, windshield washer fluid. All that is located within the central garage area, and we kind of disperse that when needed. So that kind of gives a big rounded picture of all the services that Central Garage provides the city. At this point, if there's any questions about the services we provide for Central Garage, we'd be happy to answer anything. Did I miss anything?
Got it covered.
Yeah, all right. Okay. So, as I noted earlier, the city has over 325 pieces of equipment, tools, and fleet that we are tasked to maintain. Just to give an idea of the variety and amount of equipment, the graphic on the slide breaks out the equipment associated with each department. So as we look at each department, we can see that we have, let's say we focus on the police department, we have over 40 different light trucks, SUVs, and passenger cars. So those are your patrol cars and your passenger cars for KPD. 2 motorcycles, 4 trailers. And then if we move to the fire department, we've got 3 ambulances, several fire pumper trucks, light service duty trucks, and a few trailers. Oh, I gotta go back. In the police department, we also have a bear, which is pretty much an armored vehicle. And if there are repairs to the bear, it takes a substantial resources to repair the bear. Parks and Rec, they have quite a few pieces of fleet equipment, everything needed to take care of our Parks and Rec. So we've got boom trucks, clippers, chipper truck in there, mowers, several light duty trucks, several heavy duty trucks, stump grinders, trailers. In our planning department, it's pretty much just light vehicles. The majority of your equipment is housed in the Public Works Department, with streets having the most amount of fleet in the city, and probably the largest number of large vehicles in the city. For that, with our graders, our dump trucks, small and large, our snow blowers, our sweepers. As we take a look at the variety of equipment, it's really important to understand that not all equipment demands the same amount of time to service and repair. However, our fleet does dictate the staffing and the facility necessary to maintain our fleet. And we're going to get into some of those specifics here in the next couple slides. One of the things that I really didn't speak to is we know that we have a list of our current fleet, but we also know that the fleet for police and fire are going to be expanding here in the upcoming years. So we are going to be adding new fire trucks and more patrol cars. For the police, I believe it's a couple each year, and then in fire, we've got two more engines coming, a ladder truck, and an ambulance. So our fleet is going to increase even in the next couple years, and we'll be obligated to take care of those. For the fiscal year 26 budget, we are going to be requesting an additional mechanic in the central garage budget to help service and maintain our current fleet. Over the past 2 years, we've had staffing support in central garage from other public works divisions in order to keep up with the workloads. So we've had support. We had to bring over support from our other divisions. Our other street operators have to come in and help during seasonal highs to keep the equipment out on the road. And we're just not going to be able to maintain that support in the upcoming years. The city's fleet in all departments have expanded. Over the last 9 years, we've gained 86 new pieces of equipment. And really that 86 doesn't reflect the new fleet that's coming in for police and fire. We are at the point where without additional staffing, we're not gonna be able to keep up with our internal service and maintenance needs, which really does impact our service level, our fleet downtime, and if we're outsourcing, it is costly. And we also just don't have any controls over the repair timing. So when that fleet's going to be back in service to support what we want to provide to the citizens of Kalispell. We just don't have a lot of say in that. And it is challenging. In talking with the mechanics, it's gotten a little better than it used to be, like say 3 years ago. It was very challenging to outsource and get our equipment back in a timely manner. But just recently, it's been a little bit better in that respect when we've outsourced, but it's not great.
That's net 86 new, because we've had other that's replaced.
Yeah, that's new.
So,
Yes.
That's just added to the
Added,
fleet.
yeah. Yep. So when we look at our planning process, we ask the question and analyzed how many technicians do we need to support our current fleet levels. And to help us understand that and to quantify the hours our staff needed to maintain a fleet, we looked at our actual level of service performance, and we also referred to a nationwide city fleet management matrix. Our fleet management strategy includes full service. So our full service package includes and covers preventative maintenance all the way up to major repairs and fabrications. However, as I said before, not all vehicles and equipment require the same amount of time per technician. So it's important to kind of look at our different types of vehicles and the demand for how many technicians are needed to take care of a fleet as a part of that. So as you can see on this slide, I gotta zoom into it. The fleet management matrix really broke it into management repair units. And if you look at the bars, the columns, it really kind of identifies the number of hours needed to spend per category of fleet. And then the numbers on the graph are the number of pieces of equipment the city has. So for example, if we're comparing to a nationwide matrix, we have 10 solid waste trucks, and really for 10 solid waste trucks, you should plan or have over 70 hours or 70 maintenance repair units are necessary to maintain that truck and to maintain that fleet annually. So with that, when you look at it, 78 MRUs or maintenance repairs units is equal to 1 tech. So when we look at this national average, it's really what it's telling us is we almost have 1 tech that we need on staff to maintain our 10 solid waste trucks, is how you look at it. And a lot of this is kind of your planning tool to see where you are and how you match up nationally. When we look at our other divisions, if we focus on the streets division and you look at, so streets in this graph is orange. So our sweepers, we have 4 sweepers, and sweepers are high intensive. There's a lot of operational components with sweepers, so they take a lot of time to repair. We have 4 of them, and so you need to plan to have technicians to do that. So sweepers take up a lot of time. Your dump trucks, we have 10 large dump trucks in the streets division. They take a lot of time to maintenance and repair when you have 10 of them. So you can kind of see the breakout by divisions and where we would need to spend a lot of our time for the equipment that we have. If you focus on the red, that's the fire department with our fire trucks. So with only 4 fire trucks, you need at least 1 or a half of a technician. We spend a lot of time on KPD, patrol cars, and it's kind of, a lot of that is very realistic for us. With Parks and Rec, you have, Parks and Rec is the light green color. We have a lot of light duty vehicles in Parks and Rec. We have a large number of them, so we're spending time because of that. We're also spending time in Parks and Rec on our mowers, and really just some of the attachments that they have. Mowers, we spend a bit of time on mowers just because they're a bit labor intensive. and they need to function appropriately. When I make the comparison, from a fire engine to a mower, well, a mower for Parks and Rec is actually significant and very important. So we spend detail and time to make sure that those mowers operate correctly, because Kid Sports really likes to have nice, clean cut grass, and that's important to that division, and that's what our job is for our services within Central Garage. So for us, it's just as important to understand what Parks needs versus what a fire truck needs too. So when we look at our nationwide comparison, the far column over on the right-hand side, it shows that we have a total of 478 maintenance repair units. So if we divide that by the 78 maintenance repairs per tech, it's telling us that we need to have about 6 technicians to take care of our fleet. Sorry, I just lost my PowerPoint. I don't know where it went. Apologies, everybody. Let me see if I can get us going back where I need. Maybe not. I think I'm gonna have to start the PowerPoint over. It's really weird. Never had that happen to me before.
Perhaps a good time to ask a question.
Yeah, go
The study
ahead.
shows you need 6, currently 3 is the number, right? Currently 3 technicians. Correct?
The study shows that currently we would need 6 technicians to maintain our current fleet.
Okay. And currently 3 is what we have.
And currently we have 3, yes.
And do you have a line item for outsourcing budget? How much you do take to other contractors or mechanics?
We do have a contract services line item in our central garage budget, yes.
Okay. And are we getting to that number?
No,
How much is that?
it is $40,000 right now in fiscal year, I believe. I will double check these numbers, but I believe we are upping it in this next fiscal year to 50. Yeah.
And that's mainly things that you're just booked up, you need to sub that out, or things that our people aren't qualified to do, be the combination of,
Yep,
right?
yep. Like I said, we try to not have to do any outsourcing when we go out to contract services. In this last year, the majority of it was for a piece of cat equipment that we couldn't. Oh no, it was for a large tandem dump truck, and we couldn't. Go ahead. What?
Yeah, it was the head gasket.
The head gasket in the motor.
Yeah, the engine head gasket.
Yeah, so we just couldn't perform that service in-house.
We didn't have the time to do it.
Oh, so not more that we couldn't do it, we just didn't have the time to complete that.
Understood.
And it was
the
substantial, huh?
Or the space.
Or the space to do that. You'll see why we're running out of space to work on all the pieces of equipment when they break down. The other contract services we send a lot, and they were under warranty, was the hybrid patrol vehicles.
I remember
So
that.
we so a lot of those warranties are starting, or some of those warranties are starting to expire. So we're bringing those, and we don't have the training to work on some of the high voltage components of the hybrids. So we outsource those to Ford right now. Is part of it? Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we do the nationwide review, it tells us that we needed like 6 employees to maintain our fleet. But as I said, we do the nationwide comparison, but then we look at what our actual performance is and what we can do internally. We are more efficient than nationwide averages, and we feel that we would be able to service our current fleet with 4, staff as a part of that. So that's why in this year's budget, we are asking for an additional mechanic in central garage. Are there any other questions on fleet, time, services?
So I knew there was a problem with those police vehicles and electronics of them. We do try and take advantage of full warranty, get the extended warranty when we purchase new
Oh,
ones.
absolutely, yes.
Everything we can get.
Yep.
Typically, 100,000 miles or, it varies all over the map. Heavy equipment, much less, I assume, but like a police car, what's the warranty on that?
Do you
So it's
recall?
100,000?
for 5 years.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep, yep. So now that we've kind of completed the review of the number of technicians that we need really to support our current fleet, that analysis directly connects us to our discussion about the central garage facility and our sizing challenges.
Just to back up, so you say 4 to meet the current equipment, but we had all those new police and fire coming online, and so with that projecting a few years into the future, what then do you estimate in terms of staffing?
You know, as they come in, it's a great question. We will try to maintain them to the best of our abilities to be able to as they come on. But there is, the potential that we won't be able to get to them all, or be able to service them at the same level of service. And I'll be back in front of council asking for another mechanic. But bringing on just one extra mechanic is going to be substantial for us and very helpful to get us up to our current fleet. So I guess give me an opportunity and give staff an opportunity. We'll see what we can do with that. And if we need to bring on more staff, we'll get that in front of Doug, and then we'll bring that in front of council for that request.
The majority of apparatuses in police are pretty close to being there, because we were able to do that last year with the upgrade. When you bring on a new station, we've already ordered the engine for that. The ambulance for that station will be in this year's budget. You're going to have some additional battalion chief vehicles, probably looking at under 10 total. So it's not a massive influx. And I say that if you're already strapped, each one's going to add a little bit more of a higher increment. But it's, in terms of that growth, we've already staffed up in some of those areas, like with the training captains. We've already been able to staff that up. The detectives, you'll see some replacements in this year, but there are just that. They are replacements within the police department. So the majority of the new stuff is going to be within fire.
Okay.
And no transfer of funds take place. You try and fund the mechanic shop full on its own. If the police department has an excess of work done, there's no line item within their budget to
There is.
transfer. There is.
Yeah, it's an internal service fund.
Okay.
Basically, they charge out to that respective department. A lot of times it's going to be on a percentage based, on a look back scenario. But no, probably about 10 or 11 years ago, it was all just a general fund department. And we switched that because it didn't make sense to see the allocation of resources. So changed it to an internal service fund, similar to like our IT department is an internal service fund, where it basically is its own, contractor within the city that, purchases goods and services from, then bills out accordingly.
And if I remember right, in my orientation, when we went through the shop, sometimes these guys do things like water below street pumps and stuff too. It's not just equipment, right? I mean, didn't they fabricate something or do? If memory serves me right.
So different departments will do different items, and based on their capacities. I'm not sure what specific story you're hearing in there, but I can tell you, we have personnel in all of our departments that fabricate something to work in the thick of a situation. And for example, within the shops, I was down there, spent a day down there a few years ago. We had a asphalt truck blow a pressure pipe or a pressure hose. Made the phone calls, could not get one for 24 hours, so they fabricated a pressure hose from a smaller diameter, did pressure testing on it, and said, okay, you can drive it at 12 miles an hour, but that's it. Because the pressure goes above it, calculated it out but they were able to get that asphalt truck to a place so they didn't have a full load of asphalt cool in their back of the bed and then have to chip it out a different way.
And isn't it true, some of these rigs, there's not even anyone locally who can work on them? It could be a Spokane type thing or out of the area completely to have service beyond the guys being able to do it, right?
That's correct. A lot of our solid waste vehicles, we have to truck them to Spokane, I believe, for those. Yeah, Spokane is the closest. The Scorpions that we just bought, one of them right now is down in Texas, getting worked on. So, yeah, just the distance for us to be able to bring them to get serviced on. I mean, we had to truck one all the way down to Texas, and then just that timing to get them back to us, get them worked on, and then get them back to us. Just we're down a fleet for long periods of time if we can't perform those internal services. And some of that really. Well, one of the Scorpions is down there, but then they're going to send us the parts so we can fix the other one. So, like I said, we try our hardest to do it internal if we can, without having to outsource it.
And sorry for all the questions. The city doesn't do a lot of leasing large equipment, do we?
We don't do leasing of large equipment. It really doesn't. When you look at the cost benefit, there's no really cost savings. We're better off owning the pieces of equipment.
I agree with you. Thank you.
Not necessarily true for some fleet management systems, but for us, when we do the numbers, it just doesn't make sense. So. Any other questions? Those are great. Okay, so I know that all of the council members have been on a tour and visited Central Garage, but just to kind of give another tour, if you will, of the Central Garage, our current facility has 3 service bays, 2 of which have lifting apparatuses. In between the bays, I'm going to pull up my pointer here. So in between the bays, that is where the mechanics store all of their tools, all their personal tools, and all of the other tools necessary to perform the work. Let's see, the welder and our metal fabrication primarily happens in one of the bays. Is it primarily? This one right here? So we do a lot of our metal fabrication in this area. The welder sits right here in this location. If we can't perform the fabrication inside the complex, then we go outside. Our current facility really wasn't set up for proper ventilation when we were performing really large fabrication jobs. Tires are stored in Connex boxes outside of the facility. We store hundreds of tires for seasonal swap outs and tire repairs. There is a fluid storage area, which stores all of the fluids necessary to support our repairs, maintenance, and routine maintenance activities. There is a parts storage area, which also functions as a crew room, but it's important for us to have these storage for parts so we can efficiently perform the work that we need. We also have a mezzanine in the upper area, and that really stores a lot of parts and pieces of certain pieces of equipment that we can repurpose and use. A lot of KPD components are up in the mezzanine in the shop complex. And really, we repurpose as much as we can sometimes and to be able to save some money on that. So I always think it's kind of important, or it's nice to look at a picture so you can see. Our tires are stored in the Connex boxes, and we're kind of overflowing with the number of tires that we have to store. And so sometimes they kind of just overflow into the complex area, or we just find areas to stick them in until we can open up the areas in the Connex box. I got to get my pointer. Apologies. So that's the Connex boxes. This area here is our fluid storage area. And then back against the wall is our tire swap out equipment up there in this area. We perform maintenance on really large vehicles in really tight areas as a part of that. And we can do that. So as a part of this is, we're able to, make it work, and we have made it work. But what's happening is, if you look at the center, we're just running out of room because we have more pieces of equipment coming in that needs maintained, and we don't have enough bay space to be able to do the work that is necessary and keep up with our routine maintenance, because we perform that routine maintenance all the time on our large fleet. If you look here at the left picture, this is our grader. It came in with just a small oil leak. It turned out to be a pretty major repair, so we lost a whole bay for a month as we had to perform this repair. And you can see that we had to lift the grader up, and we do get creative with our space, but we had to use the forklift in this little tiny area to maneuver in there to lift up the grader to be able to perform the work, so we could take the grader apart and put it back together. And really, we thought it was a small repair. It just ended up being a much larger repair. But these types of situations happen when you have a large fleet. If you look at the far right picture, you can just kind of see our equipment necessary to perform the services required. We're just running out of room, if you will, in this building. Looking at another picture, really, you can just kind of see that we do utilize our space to the best of our abilities, but we're starting to get a little bit crammed in the building. And this is the parts storage area / crew room. And in the top middle picture, we had to do some preventative maintenance on the paver before we brought it into season this year, but all the bays were filled in central garage, so we actually had to perform that service in the streets building, which took up our space in the streets building to store equipment. So it's just kind of like this domino effect, and we're doing a lot of shuffling around of equipment to be able to get through and maintain the equipment that we have in front of us. And then you can see that our facility is, it's an older facility. It was built, I actually don't know the date. I just know it was there by 1990. So I'm assuming it was built probably in the 70s or 80s is when this building was built, but I just don't know the exact time. It really wasn't built to be able to perform services and maintenance on our larger fleet. So our current building height really does restrict the number and the type of work that we can perform on our fleet. Our garbage trucks, when you look at so our building's just over 16 feet tall. But then when you start looking at the space, the height we need to actually perform maintenance inside a solid waste truck, we need at least 19 feet. For a dump truck, to be able to raise a dump truck, we need 21 feet. And then really for the ladder truck, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you have to actually lift the ladder up to be able to access the engine and everything in the cab. So to be able to perform work on a ladder truck, you need a building that's at least 26 feet or higher, and we're at 16. So if the ladder truck does break down, we're working on it outside. So if it's, freezing, we're out there working on the pieces of equipment in temperatures, which makes it very difficult to do. And really, when Central Garage was built, I just don't think that those types of fleet services were performed by the city. And the equipment nowadays is just much larger, and we are better at maintaining our equipment internally. So really, as a kind of a summary, the challenges we're facing, we're just running up against facility space, both square footage and height. The buildings lack the necessary bays and infrastructure to safely support current and the growing service demands. Are there any questions on the current facility?
Maybe you're going to address this, but you're out of space. Do you have space to expand where you're currently located? Is there a way?
Not at the current location of this building, but I am going to get into that. Kind of looking into the future, what our facility needs are, and what facility would kind of support us the best, and where that would be located. So yeah, I do.
Thank you.
Yep. I mean, that was like a perfect lead in to the next slide, Carrie. Thank you. So as we plan ahead, a new shop would be designed to support operational efficiencies for fleet maintenance and repairs. Features would include 3 general repair bays and a dedicated preventative maintenance fluid service bay. This would help streamline routine services that we perform on the fleet, oil changes, fluid changes, and then just the minor repairs. We would have a dedicated welding bay with the proper ventilation for safer and more effective fabrication and repair work. We would have a taller ceiling to accommodate the larger equipment. And then just kind of to mirror what we have now, a dedicated parts storage area, enabling us for quick access for critical components, and then a dedicated tire storage area so we could support that tire change out service that we do in Central Garage. To kind of meet all those needs, the proposed facility size would be a little over 13,000 square feet. The facility would be located in the westerly area of the shop complex. So right now, this is the Central Garage building, and it would be moved over into this area. Cost estimates for this facility, including the and site improvements, is about $6 million. The cost estimate we got we utilized costs from MDT, is also building a shop facility up north, so we were able to get some pretty good cost estimates from their engineer as they moved forward with their building. So we do have space to build a building in the westerly area of our shop complex, and so it would just go back in this area. When we looked at, when we were looking at opportunities to fund a $6 million capital project, it's pretty significant in the Central Garage and internal transfer. So we looked really at 2 options. The first option was to utilize a 10-year loan an intercap loan at a 5% interest rate. And then the second option, we looked at a 20-year loan at a 4% interest rate. And really, that was based off of a certificate of purchase financing opportunity. And then really, I just calculated what the debt service would be on those to kind of give council an idea of how it would affect the other funds as if or when we ever moved forward with the facility construction. So I took all those numbers. The table in front of council includes the internal transfer for each fund. There's 17 funds that transfer internally into the central garage. The debt payment is included into this internal transfer. And I looked at it for 2 years for fiscal year 26 and 27. And again, this was just kind of an idea to show council how it would affect the other funds for that. So if we looked at our first option, and you look at all those funds, the orange column represents fiscal year 25 and the internal transfers for each one of those funds. And comparatively, when you add in the capital debt for those internal transfers, it does significantly affect those other funds. And as it would, $6 million capital project is pretty significant part of that. So, the funds that it really affects are the streets and solid waste. Because again, as you even looked at that matrix, you could see that is where, a lot of their time and energy is spent are on those divisions' fleets. So, however, it does also affect your parks. I mean, it's a big change for your parks, fire also, and police. So there is quite a bit of effect that it would that would happen with a 10-year loan. And even as I looked at our streets and solid waste, this was a really hard challenge for those funds to be able to support this. Also at the current rates and assessment. So then if we looked at the second option, which was a 20-year loan, kind of reduced those loan payments, was a little bit easier to fund by all of the funds that supported the internal transfer. And when again, same thing, when you look at your streets and your solid waste, it's still pretty significant, but when I did the reviews, it was definitely manageable. So the funds could manage, a 20-year loan at, I think I used a 4% interest rate on that. It was definitely manageable for the public works funds. But again, not being, it's definitely a challenge probably for some of your other internal transfer general fund funds as a part of that. So,
These funds always, of course, opportunity to refinance at a lower rate in future years if rates go down.
I think so, yeah.
Just depending on what financing mechanism you use and if it allows for that. Some bonds have an advanced refinancing, some don't. Just depends on that mechanism. And to go a little farther off, the cumulative effects within the general fund is pretty significant as we were starting off in that budget process this year. We're still looking at it, seeing what it does, and obviously the final numbers that come out in August. But it has a pretty significant hit, especially this year. We don't anticipate the carryover being as high as it has been in the past because we've had, honestly, a lot of overtime as we've been in training with our new recruits. Now, the new recruits, of course, are out of the dedicated levy, but the cost centers for those overtime shifts are our current personnel that are within the general fund. So you'll see that as one of them. You'll see high costs of staffing within our general fund this year that just impacts that traditional carryover that we've seen. When we first started this discussion, it was like, okay, if we had that same And last year was kind of an outlier because we had a lot of vacancy savings, but I just anticipate a lower than average that we'll see this year that really impacts then that following year's budget. So, see, we're still keeping an eye on it, but, we're looking at a half-year payment for this debt issuance, not even a full year, and it was going to be hard for the general fund to adopt, from what the components are. And, as we're getting into some of the discussion, the certificate of participation is basically a lease purchase. The financial institution owns the facility until you pay it off. At a more level, it's not just a note, it's actual, they own that facility, the land underneath it, as you're making those payments off. So, like I say, it's one of those things where we're just starting to look at all the different options that are available and what may be present. There may be an opportunity to do a 15-year
Intercap?
intercap loan
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
potential. That impacts some of the general fund capacity, but we really haven't used that capacity in the past. So again, looking at all those things, but it's still going to be a heavy lift whenever we get to that point.
What is the proposed size of the new building?
It was 13,500 square feet.
That's what I thought.
And that really was based off of 3 bays, a fluid service being bay and a welding bay, and then the appropriate part storage type of stuff.
They wouldn't own the land under the building, would they?
What's that?
You said they would own, if it was financed, they'd own the land under the building?
Under one financing mechanism, that'd be your lease purchase, your certificate of participation. They would have that component. So we'd probably have to actually survey that parcel out, create an access component, so it's illegally done. So there's challenges with that mechanism as well. But like I said, it's, we want to investigate all those different opportunities.
Just tying this to some previous discussions, but the, sidewalk, bike, discussion we had, chose not to put it on the levy. We were talking about looking at this year's budget, funding it without a levy. I assume this would affect that in terms of availability of funds to be able to fund any of that work that we were looking at as part of that levy.
I'm not making the connection. Can you?
So when we had that discussion about sidewalks and bike lanes and all that, and we were talking about putting on the levy, that discussion ended by a decision by the majority not to go to the voters to levy, and instead a suggestion was that we look at it within the budget without going before the voters. And so in terms of having that discussion of what's available in the budget, I would imagine if we're looking at this, there wouldn't be much available if it's coming from.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty tight budget and always has been.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is policy level discussions at the council. We'll present our recommended budget, and it's always tough. And honestly, you've heard me say this over and over. I do not like the timeline of budgeting in the state of Montana, where you have a proposed budget that we're doing before we know what the carryover is and before we know what the final valuations are in August. So that's why normally it's at, full taxing capacity and usually doesn't end there. Normally we're at, 1 or 2 mils below. That's kind of been our historical. Last year we were further below that cap because of all that carryover, because we had a lot of vacancy savings in both police and fire in fiscal year 24, but it's always been pretty tight within that.
And just to kind of stay on that topic a little bit on the budget, a little bit off topic here, but, there was the discussion about the code enforcement officer, which I wasn't at the meeting, but I did watch the meeting and saw that there was kind of a decision, at least for now, of not pursuing that further. But the thinking on the budgeting for that position, is that then feeding into this position at the garage, or is there funding that might be available? Because I've spoken in the past of being interested in a housing and homeless staff person within the planning department. Is there possible funding there for a position like that, or are we?
So again, this is an internal transfer, so the staffing in here would be distributed throughout all the departments, including the enterprise funds component. So it has a less of an impact on the general fund. General fund is tight, always has been. You're asking me policy preferences, that's council's decision. You know, you want to cut service level somewhere else, that's what council can do. If you want to, you know, hire in a different component in there.
Thank you.
Shifting gears just a little bit. First of all, I have to say, this is probably one of the most undervalued departments that a government has. That is the heartbeat of everything, as you've said, Susie. I mean, everything comes through there. They all need it back right away. They do their best they can to get to it. I appreciate that so much. I want to back up to some, I see the jack up against the wall and tight quarters. Have you received OSHA concerns about some of the working quarters and how you're trying to squeeze 50 things into what probably should have 10?
We actually just recently went through a state OSHA compliance inspection, and we did great on that. So a lot of that is our workforce, and ensuring that we provide a safe working environment and the tools necessary for a safe environment for
Very good.
But our welding bay is not up to snuff. I mean, we can say that we definitely need better ventilation in the building. It just wasn't built to be able to perform the welding that we do. That's why in those situations we bring it outside. So
Do you do body work and painting, et cetera, too?
we do a lot of fabricating for like the back of a solid waste truck in the back area of a solid waste truck, but not necessarily body work. No, we'll send that out on stuff. So,
Has anybody
and we
ever,
don't do painting either.
I'm sorry?
We don't paint either.
Okay. Has anybody ever run the number of, if you farmed all this out, what that bill would be? If it would, and I think you were a little low, and something that could cost 60 would cost you 120.
We were, when we can perform it internally, it's always going to cost us less money. So, I've never done the exercise where if we outsourced all of our maintenance on our fleet, what that cost would be. I haven't done that.
Be huge, wouldn't it?
It would be significant, especially on our large equipment. Yep. Yep.
Hard to prioritize too, Mr. Fisher.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
I do want to express my appreciation the fact that we do so much in-house, because I mean, whether it's here and all the examples you gave, or talking about the publicity we did for the emergency levy and some of the planning documents that we do in-house and stuff, I think we really do take advantage of doing things in-house, and that saves us money. And especially when we look at the national level, the federal level, where in my opinion, so much when we talk about government waste gets wasted on contractors and going out to private sector for a lot of that stuff at the national level. I appreciate the fact that we are saving, I think, considerable amount of money when we do stuff in-house, and I appreciate the efforts that our staff makes to do it that way.
Thank you, Your Honor. Susie, if this were to happen and everything would be moved into a new building, what becomes of this one? Are you going to be able to continue to use it
Oh,
for
yes.
other? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you coordinate with Councilmember
next
Gabriel on this discussion?
Yeah.
Because
Sorry.
I think that is going to probably pretty close up here. You're going to see the next slide.
Okay.
But we can talk about, okay. So, great discussion. I was actually just going to summarize that the city has grown, so has our fleet, and our facility eventually is going to need to grow with the city. We're running out of space, both in square footage and in height. We're not going to be able to keep up with the services we provide, which I think is a huge benefit for the city, as you all noted. So thank you for that. Our next steps really for the central garage, if the funding can support it, we'd like to bring on a professional to help us with the siding and the sizing and get us some preliminary engineering so we can then move forward with a good cost estimate. Although I think I actually have some pretty good numbers, but it would help us with the siting and location and everything, which supports the need for other facilities as our city grows. One of, as kind of Doug alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, as part of our solid waste master planning, we knew that we would need to have a heated storage facility to house 4 of our solid waste pieces of equipment. So that'll be in fiscal year 26's budget. We're going to incorporate that. It's estimated to cost us about $1.3 million, and we're going to utilize the intercap loaning process for a 10-year loan. And that building would be placed also in the westerly area of the complex. And it's going to be in 1 of 2 places. We would prefer the building to be located west of the proposed central garage area. However, if it doesn't fit there, then we would move it over into this area, which is currently where we house a lot of our snow storage and other material storage. So we do prefer this location over this one, but we kind of need to start looking at planning the complex. So it'd be nice to be able to look at that with both the central garage and the solid waste as looking at it as one kind of project, so I can kind of lay things out appropriately for future. But to get to your question, I sat down with my staff at the beginning of the year and we looked at facility planning, and we are very tight in the street and sewer department. So the sewer facility, it's just off the edge of this. So it's that small building right there. So our sewer department is actually out of space also. So we would utilize, and we would start to do some shifting, and we would utilize the current central garage facility as the new sewer warehouse. And then we would move the equipment that we have to store outside for streets and put that in the sewer. So yes, I got planned. Yes, it would help substantially with other fleet that we need to be storing inside. So the space won't be vacated for long. We'd utilize it. Right now, I don't know if anybody recalls, if you've walked into the street department and you've seen the 13 crew that we have share this really small crew room. It would be nice to give them a crew room where they have a little bit of space in there, and 2 restrooms. That would be really nice for them. So yeah, we will occupy that space through there. Really, that concludes the presentation for Central Garage and for solid waste. Happy to answer any other questions council might have.
Question, just looking at the numbers, we did 10-year, 20-year, financing 50% or financing 100%, correct? Is that,
Oh, no,
or what were
the first year was a half a year debt payment.
just a
and the
half a year
half
and
a year
then got
debt
it?
payment.
Okay, that's, I was
Yeah.
sitting there going, because I'm going, I don't think we have the reserves to pay for half.
Yeah, no, as I was pulling this all together,
Some reserves, but-
I was thinking we're gonna get it done this year.
Right.
Yeah, and really, after talking with Doug, he's like, we just can't handle it in fiscal year 26. So I had this stuff pulled together thinking that
Okay.
we're gonna get it done, and we're gonna try to get some engineering.
Got it. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, it was half a debt for fiscal year 26, but
Got
full debt payment in 27. That's kind of what that
Okay.
is.
I guess I just have a question about the space. I mean, obviously, we're continuing to grow. I think some time ago, I saw an image of that space there behind Legends Field for Public Works, kind of allocation of different things. And it wasn't this image, it was something different, some other things. And so obviously those other things are going to have to be somewhere else if these garages are going there. And at one point, are we running out? I mean, even that space is limited with our growth and stuff. At some point, we run out of space here. when
You-
then, are we looking at elsewhere, property elsewhere that I know there's that property, south of the animal shelter that we have, and I'm not sure what the intended purpose of that in the future is, but
So numerous questions in there, and I'll
Yes.
try and hit them all.
yes.
So yeah, the image you saw previously was probably a lot of fleet storage, which doesn't really change. It just shifts where those fleet is being stored on that facility. One thing is a treatment facility that's being shifted, I think, down.
A decant facility
decant
for
facility.
stormwater, so we can appropriately decant off of when we're cleaning catch basins. And you kind of, you're cleaning out the debris out of the catch basins. Right now, we're just disposing of that on site behind the treatment plant, and it gets very muddy and sloppy. So we need to construct a decant facility. So we'll be doing that.
But that was at one point listed in there, and
It was,
shifted
yeah.
south
We
past the
shifted
treatment
it down
plant.
behind the treatment plant because ultimately that's where that material will end up is by the treatment plant. So really it was a better plan we thought through it to move it down behind the treatment plant because that material gets mixed in with our street sweepings, which is a regulated waste. So we do have to put that in the street sweepings pile, sample it, and then dispose of it appropriately. So it kind of eliminated a haul, if you will. The other thing we did have here was just covered equipment storage. For a lot of that was for streets department, and with kind of the shifting, we're able to utilize other areas to be able to store some of that equipment. Not to say that we might have to build some covered storage in these areas in the future also.
So your question about the property south of the animal shelter, that is a biosolids facility right now. That's what it's permitted for. It's through the EPA program, so it has restrictions on what can be used there. But your question preceding that was, are we looking at other spots? Ideally, the component would be to have a additional satellite facility for some of our equipment up on the north end. So always looking for that property. In this year's budget, I think it's in the streets department.
It's in the streets department.
We're
Yeah.
going to allocate some funds for, if we need to purchase an option at the time property comes available, if some comes available, to bring it back for potential ratification by the council. So you'll see funding in there for, the right to engage in an option for a future purchase if we do see some of that. Because ideally, you'd want to look at a strategic area that you can, store some equipment to save on, transfer time up and down. 'Cause you're talking about a large piece of equipment, especially if you have to trailer it, you're putting in a lot of time through there. So you'd want it to be an efficient and effective location from where we're at, but definitely looking at additional satellite.
So the biosolids, place south of the animal center, that's like a designated for future biosolids use?
No,
or-
for right now.
What-
If you
what are
wanna
we-
Yeah,
address-
so it's 40 acres. The 40 acres was purchased as part of an EPA grant, and it has deed restrictions and utilized for, it's actually treated waste,
Oh,
treated.
so we're
solid.
spraying it? We're like spraying it on there or something?
And we utilize that when we clean our tanks. So when we clean out our fermenter, our digesters, we utilize that area and we put, when we clean those tanks, and that's where we put the, it's digested waste or fermented waste. So it's an area for us to be able to manage different types of waste generated as part of a treatment plant.
So this is news to me, so I'm kind of curious, but
So it's not been, and we've had this discussion since we started the biosolids discussion, because this 40-acre lot was
Yeah.
part of the initial discussion. So
no,
understand that
no.
you may not.
I just may not have caught. That's fine. But I'm curious. So the EPA approval of that. I mean, are they looking at kind of groundwater flow and contaminants, risk of going off-site, or what? How
It's
that
all
work?
under a permitted.
Yeah, we're permitted
Process.
to apply our biosolids in that location and our digested or our tank waste, if you will. And we have been since, we've had that property down there, I believe, since the early 90s. I'm
Oh, we've been using it since the 90s.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't been our primary area for biosolids because we bring it up to Glacier Gold, since the 90s. But It was a place we create waste with our wastewater treatment plant outside of just biosolids, so we needed a place to dispose of it appropriately.
So with our discussions on the changes to the biosolids, we will continue to use that.
Absolutely, because we have to clean out the tanks. So yeah, it's a really important piece of property for us. And it's also deed restricted, so you can only apply biosolids or wastewater treatment plant solids on that property.
And that's deed restricted
It was a component of the grant.
yeah, but there's no timeline on it. In other words, it's forever deed restricted. Like if we did shift someday and no longer needed that, that deed restriction would not be able to be removed or with remediation
I'm
or
not-
something?
I mean, I guess I'm not a land attorney. I've never
Yeah.
really thought of
Might
the
be like a
question.
conservation easement.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm curious how it's how it's
I
structured.
don't know. I wouldn't know the answer to that question. I just never needed to know the answer to the question.
I don't know if you'd
Because
ever
I'm
wanna
gonna
vote on
put
it.
biosolids on farmland.
And I think you were done, right?
I am,
so.
yeah, just ask,
Yeah,
answering
My
questions.
question isn't super important, but I'm just looking at the map where the new central garage facility is. And I'm sure we can't see elevation there really at all, but the way it's oriented, it looks like it's wasting a huge amount of that space.
So that's why you do the engineering and design and the site.
Exactly, but I'm
Components.
just wondering if, I guess this isn't set in stone. We're open to whatever the engineer decides is the best use of that.
This is sticky notes.
Okay.
Yeah, engineer and input from staff, because really the reason it's oriented that way, or the initial thought, and again, as we bring on an engineer, we'll cite it and talk through some of those design discussions, but you need to be able to pull through and
That's what I
drive
was
around.
wondering, if it was a pull-through thing or what,
Yeah.
because that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there needed to be enough area to be able to store the tires.
But you don't have that today, right? You have to back out.
We do have one bay you can pull through.
Okay.
You have one bay you can pull through all the way. The other one has the lifting apparatuses, so you can't drive all the way through.
Yeah, like I said, not a big deal. I just it was, I couldn't get it out of my head when I looked at the
Yeah,
picture.
and it's really hard. Yeah, and you're right. It is kind of like a sticky note. I'm just kind of trying to scale 13,500 square foot in this area. And
Gotcha.
yeah, very, very high level graphics here.
Not a big deal.
And that green belt area in the middle is kind of a low lying area where you stack branches and everything.
It's actually a very large drainage area and ditch that flows to Ashley Creek. So it's got a huge drainage areas that flow through here, and
that's where
it's not
everybody-
a very good area. I mean, it cuts right through the middle of the property, so it kind of makes managing that area challenging. But
That's
it's
where you
in a
put all
flood
your-
zone, so it'd also be hard to fill it in.
That's where you put all the city branches and debris and everything.
We
and-
put all this, some of the city branches and storage, back in here.
Yeah.
But a lot of it goes back behind the wastewater treatment plant is where the majority of our material storage goes for processing.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah.
What are the yellow, blue, and green lines?
Oh, those are your water, sewer, and storm
Okay,
lines.
thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Clear as mud?
Like I say, definitely anticipated this being a little bit of a lengthier presentation, so I wanted to take it out of the budget discussions, especially, there may be some aspect within the budget this year, when we get to those final numbers and see what it is, or some initial design. Just don't know as of yet, but definitely something to be aware of as we have future discussions and future activities related to it. So definitely appreciate council taking the time for this presentation tonight.
Now, I was going to bring that up. This great to have a microscope on, certain things as we go into budget season, but until we get to the entire budget and see how it affects everything, it's great to have this knowledge packed away so that when we see those numbers in the budget, we can go, oh, that's what's going on here.
Okay. Mr. Russell, Good. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, nope, I can just go ahead with some of the stuff within the report. Kind of a lineup of work sessions that we have going. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, is there any public comment? No? Okay. Mr. Russell?
See if I can get them in order. I didn't write them in order. Next week's work session, I'll have a presentation on Safe Streets for All and that potential grant application and going through the process and outlining, some of the different timeframes related to that. We'll also kind of do another advanced budget component with Parks and Recreation and their business analysis. We do it about every couple of years in terms of what we're looking at. This year, I'll tell you, they're impacted by School District 5 putting out facility charges for all of our programs. So that's having an impact on all the rate structures, and Parks and Rec will be able to go over that next week. Then we'll have a budget workshops scheduled for the 6th and 7th. Again, we have those tentatively scheduled at 6 p.m. versus 7. Should be able to get through them, each night, especially since we're doing a lot of this stuff up front in some of these meetings. And like I say, the general fund is pretty straightforward. We asked about personnel. There's no additional personnel within the general fund. We talked about the position within Central Garage, and then the other 2 positions that are part of the budget that are new are in water and solid waste, and those are part of the work plans and rate structures that have already been discussed and adopted by council. So should be able to get through really those budget workshops in a few hours each night. Schedule them on the Tuesday and Wednesday, but plan for 6 p.m. on the 6th and 7th.
May 6th, May 7th?
What's that?
May 6th, May
Yeah,
7th.
yep. May 12th, tentatively looking at bringing up the work session that was requested on the parking lot down on 19th and Airport Road. And on the 26th, I'm going way out because we had some of these requested. Memorial Day week is the 26th, so we typically don't have a work session that week, and that was, they planned on maintaining that unless there's a strong desire. And then that next work session in June would be the hazard mitigation work session from last week. Just a couple more items. Senate Bill 2 passed today through the House, which means it's passed both House and Senate. It would remove new growth from being given to the municipality at the sunset of a TIF. So establish a TIF district for the main purpose of doing urban redevelopment to create new growth. And this legislation would remove all that growth from the, once it sunsets, the municipality would not get that.
So they really want us to wither and die.
Well, it'd only be under certain circumstances that you could be advised to do a tax increment district. Because you think about it, you have this parcel of land that you freeze it. So for those 20 years, you're not getting any of that growth on that parcel. So then when the TIF sunsets, you go back to that level. You don't even get that incremental growth that you would have gotten if it was not within a TIF. So you're financially hurting the process, and essentially you're not only foregoing those funds, but you're giving those growth numbers and interest up. That bill is tied to another bill that I think it's 117, if it passes, Senate Bill 2 would go away, but they're looking at a restriction on growth within that bill as well. So it's just stuff to keep aware of. One thing that was nice on Senate Bill 2 is it's for any new tax increment districts, which I think is appropriate, because it puts the appropriate planning being able to go in for anything new. So like our West Side TIF or downtown TIF, those would not be impacted when they sunset. But like I say, if that bill holds true, you'd want to be very careful in terms of, creating another tax increment district within a municipality. And the last thing, we received a letter from the county requesting that the council consider going to a mail-only ballot for the general election. So we bring that to council if there's any interest in going to a mail-only, or if we're still good with the traditional at the poll.
So nationally, isn't it the Republicans who are saying mail only leads to fraud and deceit and miscounted ballots? I mean, that's always,
I'm not sure that wasn't put in the letter that we received.
oh, got it, okay. I
We
know
can
my
go-
own
I'm
personal-
comfortable going with the general direction of the council if he wants to respond. If you want to put it to an actual agenda item vote later on, I'm fine with that. Kind of take council's pleasure on that, but we should respond to that request.
I did read the letter. I'm not sure how they phrase it in previous years, but I read it like you could read it as them saying to include mail ballots as part of the election, not necessarily mail only, but maybe
Well, mail's always included.
Mail's always,
well, that's why
yeah.
so I don't know
This
if
would
they
be a mail-only
Okay.
ballot.
Well, I would, because all the other elections have been conducted both mail and on site, and the public expects that. And I think it'd be very confusing for the public to go to mail only, and you would actually probably lose people participating in the election that you wouldn't otherwise because of that. And I also know a number of people who just prefer the in-person voting. And so I think it'd be very confusing. I think it would decrease participation, and it's already a problem, the amount of participation in municipal elections. So I would not support going to mail only.
If you want me, I'll just reply back to him and say no.
Yeah, I'm looking to give, council direction.
Personally, I think it should all just be in person.
I think so too.
But that's my own personal,
What are you supposed to do?
Everybody has holiday vote.
yeah, well, absentees. If you
That's
have
mail-in.
legitimate reason, yeah.
Right, but
But
That- that's
otherwise,
both.
show up.
Who
It's an
decides what's
obligation. How many
legitimate?
people died to give us this obligation?
So again, the general guidance is that council would prefer at the poll in addition to any other. Okay, we'll provide that response back. And I don't have anything else to add.
Anything from council? Mr. Dowd?
I wanted to give you an update on Montana House Bill 221, since I brought it up a couple weeks ago, the one that would change municipal elections to be on even years. That went all the way through, oh, by the way, sponsored by Representative Lucas Schubert.
Oh, wow, Christ is king.
It went all the way through the House, passed, went to the Senate, and 7 days ago, the Senate tabled that bill. That doesn't mean it couldn't pop up after the session and that whatever that special meeting they have after the session is called, but currently it's tabled.
Okay.
Yeah, there was an article recently about our Safe Streets plan for Main Street, reducing Main Street to 3 lanes. And I did see there's a lot of chatter online about questioning the benefits of that. And I know it was part of our Safe Streets plan. And I noticed that Federal Department of Transportation has a video where they talk about why you would do that. Like, what are the benefits of what's called road diet, reducing like a 4-lane to a 3-lane. And just thought it'd be worthwhile either, through the city social media or because we have the discussion on safe streets, at a work session coming up showing that video. I know we've talked about it, I'm sure, in meetings about the values of why you would want to do that, but it was an informative video worth kind of hitting that some more so the public understands. Because I understand from the public's perspective, if you haven't heard that argument, it sounds like not a good idea. But if you don't know the research that goes behind it and why it is actually proves beneficial to do something like that, I might provide that link.
Anything?
I guess my recommendation is to send it to the council so they can review it. We're having that work session next week, and if they want to go from somewhere, council can provide that guidance and direction of.
How long of a video is it, right?
It's like, I think it's like 10 minutes maybe,
Okay.
10, 15 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
I forgot to add to my comments that I probably will be able to get through that mitigation document by June. So thank you.
And once again, I wonder if there's a brain cell in Helena. So these are the same people that tell us the cities didn't do enough for affordable housing yet they're gonna strip any tools we have away from producing housing, redeveloping, going vertical, et cetera, and make it harder for us to do some of these things with some of the legislation.
I would just say, I would think very critically of doing another tax increment
TIF.
financing
Yeah.
district.
It-
And I think that has, definite challenges of why you would do it when, it's written in the urban redevelopment statute. So you expect to have that achieved to benefit everyone. And this just, it would be challenging to recommend, a tax increment financing district in the future, because you're definitely going to limit yourselves. And ultimately, I think it has negative consequences on the community.
So, okay, all right, just wanted to double check, so. With that, we're adjourned.